This video is about a rather motley collection of insect-killing vaporizers, but it's mostly about this one, which is by far the most interesting. And the reason this video came about was it kind of stems from the same reason I originally made this video about the Xiaomi, if I've pronounced that correctly, mosquito control device. And this one is interesting because it uses a wick material soaked with Transfluthrin, which is a pyrethroid, and it's got a fan underneath and it runs on batteries, and it's just a convenient way of having sort of insect control while on holiday without actually having the mains power. It's got a couple of modes here. You can just press the button to turn it on, or you can press and hold the button, it goes in timer mode, or press it again, it goes off. It's quite an interesting little device. And I made a video about this one already. We took it apart and examined the circuitry. And the reason this all happened in the first place really was because I noticed some little gold moths appeared, and here in the UK, we don't actually have a problem with mosquitoes. We do have a problem with midges, but we occasionally have a problem with clothes moths, the little gold moths that they lay eggs and the eggs hatch out, and the larvae are the main issue because they like nibble at fabrics and they damage them. And because I've got a largish collection of overalls, don't even ask, it's just something that happened from a young age. I quite like all the different styles of overalls, particularly with logos on them and from different countries. I was a bit paranoid. I didn't want them eaten by moths. So one of the first things I did was I found moth-type killer things, and one was this zero-in clothes moth killer from the local Jack stores. And it's based on a pyrethroid called cypermethrin, and it really makes your throat, it makes you cough, and it's just unpleasant. If you spray it into a room, you have to stay out that room for ages afterwards, I found. The other thing I found was this one, which is a flying insect killer, kills moths, mosquitoes, many other flying insects in and around the home. And this one says protection up to 60 days, and then rather confusing in the back, it says it can last up to 3 months, which is 90 days. I'm not sure. Up to means it starts at 0 days. But this one is very simple. It's a plastic frame, and it looks the part, except when you open it, it's just basically bunched up sort of absorbent paper inside that they've soaked with the Transfluthrin, which is yet another pyrethroid. I'll just try and keep all that in. Slight smell of lavender off that, must still be active, I guess. So these things operate, they're based on plant extracts called pyrethrins, and they operate in the nervous system of insects, and that's how insects work. If you take a fly, for instance, when a fly lands, when it lands on a surface, they tend to be operated by almost like a very simple computer program inside. If you touch a fly's feet, its wings stop flapping, and if you then remove the pressure from the fly's feet, the wings start flapping again. It's these little sort of simple control patterns they have. And it acts on their central nervous system, and it disrupts their behaviour. So in the case of these things that vaporize a slight haze of Transfluthrin, which is what this one does, into a room, it's a very low level, but it just disorientates the insects. If it doesn't kill them, it just deactivates them. They can't do their sort of hunt the human down and bite them and sort of thing like that. So that's how they kind of work. And that got me looking at all the different types of devices, including on eBay. And eBay is very interesting because this one came from India, which is why the price is in rupees. It's reduced from 99 rupees, or is that, it says rupees 0.99. Sure, that's not 0.99 rupees. I guess the Indians can tell me that. But it's reduced to 0.85 or 85. I guess it's going to be 85 because I did a rough conversion that came out to the equivalent of £1 to our currency simply because of the exchange rates. And this particular one came from a eBay seller in India called Alibaba, which is quite funny because it's like, I don't know if they've deliberately based that on Alibaba, but it's Alibaba, ELLAIBABA 786. And it costs £7.60, including shipping, which is low. And that was not just the unit, but they actually stuck an extra bottle of the Transfluthrin liquid in it as well. which is very good, particularly given this one is the most sophisticated of them all because it's got 2 level settings and it's got PTC automatic regulation. So this is described as Goodnight Mosquito Repeller Vaporizer and Liquid Refill with double power mode. The repeller bit is quite important there because these don't always just kill mosquitoes, they just disorientate them, they just stop them operating as I described earlier. And the reference to the PTC regulation, there are other ones like this one. This is a cheap British one, which doesn't contain any transfluthrins. It is, I think it's based on plant oils. It smells like lemongrass. And I'm pretty sure when I saw it on the shelf of the store, I went back, I disposed the packaging. I went back and tried to get another just to see what it said, but I'd remembered it just said basically natural oils that didn't contain any sort of pyrethroid chemicals. This one has very odd reviews on Amazon. It's sold on Amazon, and it varies from people saying it works great to people saying do not buy this for various reasons. One of them is the common complaint that it didn't light up, and that's largely because it doesn't have a light in it. That's why it doesn't light up. And you think, well, isn't that a bit silly because you can tell it's on from that? But apparently people had plugged it in and they were getting bitten by insects all night and the liquid level didn't go down. They probably didn't understand that you could feel if it was heating up. But that was one of the biggest problems. And the other problem was that apparently these plastic pins push in on some of the units. So when you plug it in, the pins instantly retract inside the unit, rendering it inoperable. But this one, if you plug it into the hoppy, it shows a power rating of 2.2 watts. And it just stays static. That's it. It's just a fixed resistor value. And that makes it very similar to the typical Airwicky type air freshener, because this one is designed to put aroma into the air. And you plug it in and it's roughly 2 watts as well. It's a very common rating for these air fresheners that just run at a fixed temperature. All these other units operate at a higher temperature and a higher power. So, for instance, this one, I got this one while I was travelling back to the Isle of Man from Glasgow, and it was from W.H. Smith's. It was one of the sort of airport holiday things. So this one cost quite a lot of money. And you plug it in, and it initially starts at a staggering 96 watts, but then it gradually drops down because it uses what's called a PTC heating element, and that is positive temperature coefficient. It means that it self-regulates, so it starts off at a much higher temperature and then regulates down, and if you were to actually cup it and enclose it to stop the air flowing through it, the current would progressively drop because all it needs is just to keep that heating element at that rough range of temperature, and it will change its resistance to match that. So this one is currently around about 13 degrees Celsius, 13 watts, should I say. And if left running for a while, it will gradually drop down. I think, what's it rated at? It should have a rating printed on it. 120 to 240 volts, that's another advantage of the PTC. It can self-adjust for the voltage. 7 watts. But the 7 watts will just be a provisional value. This one is also interesting. It's got a neon to show it's on, which is really important with these things, particularly if you're going to get bitten by bugs. But it uses the PTC ceramic element that you can also slide one of the little tablets into, the ones that last one night, and you just load it up each night and it vaporizes the chemical off that pad. But it takes those pads, or you can screw in the cartridge with the pyrethroid chemical. This one, I think, came from China. I say I think it came from China because the text on it is Chinese. I think it's Chinese, maybe Japanese, but I think it's Chinese. And it shows the happy baby sleeping in a cloud snuggled up to the moon, as they tend to do. And this one is probably based on Transfluthrin. I think so. I can't really remember, I got it a while back, but this one has an on-off button and a neon, and once again, if I plug it in, it starts 80 watts, drops down to it's down quickly to about 10 watts, and it will self-regulate again to a fixed sort of power. What does this one's rating say? 4 watts. So it's going to self-regulate down to 4 watts, but I'd say that this would probably also work on 110 volts. It says only 220. Another interesting thing I've noticed here, light green, red, red, white, white, and dark green, dark green. I wonder if that's a requirement, that these things are colour-coded so you don't mix the cartridges between them, and each has different power ratings. I don't know if that's a standard or if it's just that I've just coincidentally had these sort of matched. This one is the most interesting. This is the one we're going to open because I want to see what's inside it. If I plug this one in, I'll plug it in upside down like this. It starts off, this is the low setting, it's got a green LED in the front, and it quickly regulates down to about 8 watts at the moment, but it will keep going down. What's it actually rated at, does it say? 5.3 watts, but it's got a turbo mode, and if you click this switch up, it changes to an amber coloured LED, and the power shoots up, and then it starts regulating down. I think this has dual PTC thermistors to actually self-regulate to those power ratings. The Transfluthrin and others, they're based on natural plant pyrethrins, and they kill mosquitoes, moths and cockwombles, which is quite useful. So they're not just dedicated to specific tasks. In the UK, I could see something, particularly this, if you had a tent, something like that's battery operated, it might give you relief from our dreaded midges, which are these tiny little bitey insects that are very annoying. But let's open this up. So it's got quite deep screws, so I don't think my normal screwdrivers are going to fit in. So let's use this, which is a screwdriver that I've pre-cut that back probably to fit in. That is one of the annoying things about the electrical screwdrivers. They've got that insulated sleeve on them that stops the screwdriver going down too deep. I see a circuit board. I see a diode. I see 2 diodes and a switch and a fuse. That's interesting. I also see a 100k resistor. And I see just 2 wires going into this device. I wonder if it's just using a diode in series, the higher power device. How would that work? Oh, no, I lie. It's got one common connection here, which is just a bare braided connection. And then it's got the 2 feeds going in. That must be 2 separate PTC elements, and it's odd, they've also got the aluminium thing through there. This is quite a complex device. That's also a rivet, which is holding the bottom onto this. What's under here? Is that visible? Is it going to reveal anything under that? I won't snap it right off because, oh, that might actually be going to reveal something, so I may actually cut this off. Right, one moment please. It has been reverse engineered and opened and reverse engineered. Let me zoom in this first. So I'm just going to try and focus on this so you can take a look and maybe zoom down. And you can see, I'll just double check that's in focus. It's got the 2 PTC elements just sandwiched between spring-loaded metal plates. So when this is in low setting, just one of these is active and the heat must just diffuse around the the ceramic. But when you activate the higher setting, both of them are active. So we've got the common connection coming up here. It's just strange that it's just a non-insulated braided connector. Must just be so they could spot weld onto that, I guess. Not really sure. And then they've got the 2 wires coming in, the sort of silicone type coated wires that are feeding the other 2. Going back down to the schematic, let's focus on that. We've got a little fuse coming in on the live, and then it goes to the PTC heating element that's active all the time. Then it goes to a switch that has the low and high setting. The switch is a 2-way switch. It's only active for the heating element in the high side, but it switches between the 2 LEDs. So when it's in the low setting, it will divert current via this diode for just so that it's for efficiency more than anything else and to protect the LED. And it lights the green LED, which is fairly low intensity. It's a gallium arsenide LED. Is it gallium phosphide is the green? I think it may actually be gallium phosphide, but it's got a 100k resistor. That's brown, black, yellow, 1 0 and 4 zeros. So 100,000 ohm resistor to limit the current through LED. And when you set it to the high setting, it kicks in this second heating element, and then the current is diverted through this diode through the yellow LED. So it's a 3-pin LED with the green and yellow chip inside it. It's quite neat. It's nicely made. It doesn't work anymore because I've burst it, but that's okay. That aluminium rivet was fundamentally just holding this plastic shell on the bottom to hold everything in place. It also probably, oh, you know what else it'll do? It'll stop the oil soaking into the ceramic. That's quite clever as well. Double function, that's quite neat. Other one I want to take to bits is this one then. This is the Chinesey one. Let's see what's inside it. Oh, I will say this one loses a point for the fact the cable has been pinched right through to the copper on the housing screws, but it's not that critical because they're well recessed and it hasn't broken the connection, so it wouldn't really be that much of an issue. So this comes apart, should come apart like this. What do we have? We have a clicky on-off switch. Where's the neon? The neon is below it. It's a very small neon with its little resistor down there. There's its resistor down there, in fact. It's a brown, green, yellow, so 150k. We've got one wire going up to this element. Is this openable, or is this... This looks like it's sort of plastic but welded shut, maybe? Is this going to separate? Let's get the screwdriver into it and make a half-assed attempt to separate this. I think that may be kind of glued into place. I think it would be destructive if I opened this. Not there's any harm in being destructive. Oh, is that actually opening? It is opening. It is opening. I think we should go all the way here. There we go. It is a PTC element again. It's that little stud. It's this ceramic-y PTC material with the metal connection top and bottom, which is now popped out. Oh, there it is. Interesting. Was there a spring in that? Just this little plunger maybe just presses it down? Okay. Interesting. So, what's the other one that uses the PTC? It's this one, but in this case it's embedded into a ceramic block. And I suppose ultimately the ceramic block, is there anything to stop the liquid wicking into that? I don't think there is. This one has a very simple arrangement. So you can see the two wires coming from the back, one going straight to the PTC element and the other going round to the neon indicator, which is just tucked down here. Things worth mentioning about these liquids. While researching it, I found that there have been a couple of poisoning incidences where a kid drank the contents of one of these bottles, or some of it, and a young Indian lady tried to commit suicide by drinking it. And what actually happened was that this liquid is not, it's got a very low percentage of the pyrethrins in it. It's mostly kerosene oil, just as a packer and just to sort of carry the pyrethrin out as it evaporates. So it's a deodorised kerosene oil, and the best way to correlate to that is to describe it as deodorised lamp oil. If you've come across the sort of paraffin lamps that you get for indoor use and you get the sort of low odour oil, it's just very refined. So it's a low odour kerosene oil with the sort of pyrethrins, and in both instances, the people who had ingested it didn't die. They had convulsions, they had sort of seizures, it was acting in their central nervous system. And in both instances, I think they were put into sedation until the effects passed, and that was ultimately it. So it's not super mega toxic. You don't know if it's going to have long-term effects though, but certainly in the quantities that it puts out into the room, the low-level vapour, it's not considered harmful. There's no evidence that it causes harm to humans. Just insects are effective because they're much smaller. It affects them on this sort of nervous level. So that's interesting. This one here is just, it's the ceramic-y element again, I think, but it is just a fixed resistor in there. Looks pretty much like some of the sort of air freshener heating elements. But yeah, interesting taking those apart, looking at the technology. Pyrethrins, natural plant-based extracts, just heavily refined and used to control insects. I suppose ultimately in Scotland, as I say, midges would be the main thing. These would be helpful if you were camping. They might actually work, particularly if you had this batch-operated one. And they did another version of this and I ordered one. It did not arrive. I ended up getting a refund. That might have been one of the sort of thing that's been happening recently with customs just seizing and destroying stuff, I'm guessing, as it comes into Britain from China. But that other version was a little batch-operated unit that went to your wrist, and it had a disc of the material with the pyrethrin soaked into it, the transfluthrin, and to disperse it, it simply spun that disc, and that created the flow of air and also put this sort of vapor into it. So you could put this on your wrist and walk about, and it would create a sort of environment around you of that sort of, I guess, an irritant to insects more than anything else to deter them. So yeah, interesting stuff, and certainly nice that you've got a lot more options. You can buy things that you can't buy in the UK on eBay from countries where they're more commonly used for more serious applications. Interesting stuff.